Family mocked my little business at Thanksgiving dinner. How's that going, still broke yet? They laughed so loudly. I stayed quiet. Yesterday, they found out I was. The laughter still rings in my ears sometimes, even now. It wasn't just laughter. It was the kind that fills a room, the kind that feels sharp, pointed, and cruel. It was last Thanksgiving. The table was packed, turkey at the center, candles flickering low, the hum of football murmuring from the living room. It should have been cozy. It should have felt like home. Instead, it felt like standing under a cold, hard spotlight. I was halfway through telling Uncle Brian about my business, something I'd poured every hour, every dime, every piece of myself into, when my cousin Jenna snorted so loudly she almost knocked over her wine glass. "How's your little business going?" she sneered, putting extra sarcasm on the word like it was a disease. "Still broke yet?" someone else chimed in. I didn't even turn my head to see who. The laughter that followed was deafening. My father chuckled under his breath. My mother shook her head in that disappointed, pitying way of hers. I stayed quiet. I smiled, small, brittle, and I let them have their fun. Inside, though, something shifted. It wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about proving myself right. I wasn't going to succeed for them. I was going to succeed despite them. After dinner, I remember standing in the kitchen, scraping leftovers into a plastic container, trying to pretend the knot in my stomach wasn't there. The sounds of laughter and football echoed from the living room. I could hear my brother Mark loudly joking about how I probably sold 3 t-shirts all year. "Maybe next year he'll afford real mashed potatoes," he cracked, and everyone laughed so hard someone coughed. I kept my head down. But something strange happened when I went to put the dishes away. I passed by the half-closed door to the den, where my father, my aunt, and a few others were talking, thinking no one could hear them. And that's when I heard it. "Poor kid," Aunt Linda said, her voice dripping fake concern. "Still chasing rainbows." My dad grunted. "If he had any sense, he'd quit that fantasy and get a real job. Wendy's is always hiring." They all chuckled. Another voice, maybe my uncle's, added, "By the time he's 30, he'll still be living in some dumpy apartment, dreaming about his big break. It's almost sad." And then my mother, sweet, gentle mom, said the words that stung the most. "Well, at least he's harmless. I mean, it's not like he'll ever actually succeed enough to embarrass us." I stood there frozen, my hands trembling around a plate I hadn't even realized I was holding. They didn't just doubt me. They expected me to fail. Worse, they needed me to fail. It was safer for them if I stayed the black sheep, the dreamer who never amounted to anything. It was easier than admitting they had chosen a life of mediocrity and bitterness, while I dared to believe I could build something better. I placed the plate carefully in the sink, walked out of the kitchen, grabbed my jacket from the hook by the door, and left without saying goodbye. Outside, the cold air bit at my face, but I barely noticed it. There was only one thought burning through my mind. Never again. Never again would I beg for their approval. Never again would I explain myself to people rooting for me to fail. That night, sitting alone in my tiny, drafty apartment, I opened my laptop and stared at the screen for a long time. I had 2 choices. Crumble under the weight of their disbelief, or let it forge me into something unstoppable. I clicked into my business plan. Adjusted it. Tightened it. Mapped out every insane, impossible goal I could dream of. Then I got to work. And I didn't stop. The first 6 months after that Thanksgiving were brutal. I worked out of a cramped 1-bedroom apartment where the heat barely worked and the plumbing rattled like a dying engine every night. Most days, I woke up before sunrise and collapsed into bed after midnight, my eyes burning from too many hours staring at a screen, my hands cramping from typing, packaging, hustling. I didn't have a glamorous startup story. There were no angel investors, no family loans. There was just me, a half-broken laptop, a second-hand printer, and a heart full of stubborn, burning defiance. Some mornings I'd sit at the tiny kitchen table, surrounded by bills and empty coffee cups, wondering what in the world I thought I was doing. Self-doubt would whisper, louder than any insult my family had thrown at me. "Maybe they were right. Maybe you are just chasing rainbows." Maybe you are just nothing. And then I'd remember my mother's voice. At least he's harmless. I mean, it's not like he'll ever actually succeed enough to embarrass us. And that would light the fire under me again. The turning point came in the least dramatic way possible. A customer I had all but forgotten about, a random online order I packed one night half asleep, tagged my tiny business on social media. A post, a photo, a few kind words about the quality of my work. It wasn't anything viral. No millions of likes. No overnight fame. But the next day, I woke up to 12 new orders. 12. More than I usually got in a week. Then 24. Then 60. I had to scramble, buy more supplies, work faster, upgrade my site, but for the first time, the momentum was real. Tangible. And with it came new people. Real people. Not family, not skeptics. People who believed in what I was building, who championed my ideas, who sent messages saying, "You're doing something special. Keep going." It stunned me, honestly. How strangers could offer more kindness than my own blood ever had. And somewhere in the whirlwind of orders, shipments, late nights, and relentless work, I realized something. Family isn't blood. Family is loyalty. Family is respect. Family is love given freely, not with conditions or judgment. The weight I'd carried my whole life, the desperate need for their approval, started to fall away. Piece by piece. Brick by heavy brick. And for the first time, I saw the road ahead clearly. It was going to be long. It was going to be lonely. But it was going to be mine. It happened on a rainy Tuesday. Funny how life-changing moments never wait for perfect weather. I was sitting at my kitchen table, hunched over a mountain of packaging orders, when I got an email. At first, I almost deleted it. The subject line just said opportunity, and it sounded like another spam message. But something made me open it. It was from a boutique owner named Caroline Walters, someone I'd never heard of but who apparently had a huge following in the indie market world. She had stumbled across one of my products, thanks to that tiny customer post months ago, and wanted to talk about a partnership. A big one. Supplying her chain of stores. Nationwide. I sat there blinking at the screen, reading her words over and over again like they were written in a foreign language. She loved the branding. She loved the quality. She loved the story. And she wanted to feature my entire product line, if I could scale up fast. I didn't hesitate. I wrote back within 5 minutes, probably sounding overeager but not caring. When she called me later that afternoon, her voice was warm, professional, excited. She asked me how big my operation was. I was honest. I told her it was just me for now. She laughed, not a mocking laugh like my family's, but a delighted, impressed laugh. "That's even better," she said. "People love authenticity." By the end of the call, I had a preliminary contract sitting in my inbox. By the end of the week, I was in touch with a small fulfillment company to help me manage production. By the end of the month, my business, my little hobby they laughed at, was signing a deal that would put 6 figures in my pocket before spring. It felt surreal. Standing in that same cramped kitchen, the rain hammering against the window, the cheap linoleum floor sticky under my bare feet. And realizing my life was changing. I should have been ecstatic. But all I felt was this strange, quiet kind of peace. I didn't punch the air. I didn't scream into the night. I just smiled. A slow, tired smile. And whispered to the empty room. "You were wrong about me." They were wrong. Every single one of them. The next year passed in a blur of sleepless nights, new contracts, and hard-earned growth. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. The little business they mocked became a company with employees, investors, and real momentum behind it. The first time I wired 6 figures into my savings account, I just sat there and stared at the screen for a long time. Not because I couldn't believe it. No, I knew this was coming. Because deep down, I realized I didn't feel the way I thought I would. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt free. That's when the idea hit me. I didn't want revenge. I wanted closure. I wasn't going to show up at their doorstep waving a bank statement in their faces. No, that would be too easy. Too loud. Too much like the kid they thought I was. Instead, I decided to let them come to me. I bought a house first, a massive one. A mansion, really? Perched at the top of a hill, with sprawling windows that caught every sunset, marble floors that echoed when you walked, and enough room to get lost in. Every time I walked through those vast, empty hallways, I reminded myself. You built this. No one can take it away. I filled the garage with the kind of cars my cousins used to joke about when they said I'd never afford more than a used Honda. A deep black Maserati. A custom Jeep. An old-school Mustang just because I could. I didn't post about it online. No selfies in front of sports cars. No champagne toasts. I stayed silent. Then, about 2 months ago, I sent out a group text. Simple. Direct. Family gathering. Sunday. Big news to share. No one turned down the invitation. Of course they didn't. Curiosity is a powerful drug. And they still thought of me, somewhere deep in their bones, as the loser they could safely pity. They didn't realize that when they drove up that winding driveway, their jaws would hit the floor before they even rang the doorbell. They didn't realize the big news wasn't about them. It was about me. And the new life I built without them. The day of the gathering arrived with crisp air and a sky so clear it looked almost painted. I woke up early, but I didn't feel nervous. Not even a little. I spent the morning quietly walking through the house, adjusting a vase here, straightening a painting there, small, meaningless tasks to pass the time. In the driveway, the Maserati gleamed like a black mirror under the sun. The Mustang and Jeep stood proudly beside it. By noon, the catering crew I'd hired was setting up a full spread in the backyard. White linens, silver cutlery, champagne chilling in buckets. I didn't lift a finger. I simply waited. At exactly 1 o'clock, the first car pulled up. It was my cousin Jenna. She stepped out of her dusty minivan wearing her usual faux designer sunglasses, and the moment she looked up at the mansion, I saw it. The hesitation. The quick, sharp glance at her husband, as if to ask, "Are we at the right place?" Another car arrived. Then another. And another. One by one, they spilled out onto the driveway, their faces a mix of confusion and disbelief. Uncle Brian muttered something I couldn't hear. My brother Mark whistled low under his breath, trying, and failing, to look unimpressed. Even my mother, who always wore an expression of bored superiority at family events, stood frozen on the front steps, clutching her handbag like a shield. Nobody said anything for a long, delicious moment. Then Jenna laughed, brittle and too loud. "Oh wow," she said, adjusting her sunglasses. "You, renting this place or something?" I smiled pleasantly. "Not renting. Bought it. Last month." Her mouth opened, then snapped shut. Someone else said, "You're kidding." Half laughing, half panicked. They weren't used to being off balance. They weren't used to me having the upper hand. I gestured toward the open doors, where the marble floors gleamed like water under the chandeliers. "Come in. Make yourselves comfortable." They shuffled inside like tourists visiting some grand museum, afraid to touch anything. I watched them from behind as they walked through the vast living room, the open kitchen, the glass walls that overlooked the manicured backyard. I could see it in their faces, the scrambling to adjust their narratives, the desperate need to find an explanation that would let them keep believing they were still superior. Fake smiles stretched tight across their faces. "Wow," my aunt said. "This is, really nice. Good for you." "Yeah," Uncle Brian added, clapping me on the back a little too hard. "We always knew you had potential." I just nodded. Let them talk. Let them twist themselves into knots. I didn't need their approval. Not anymore. Not ever again. I wasn't here to impress them. I was here to say goodbye. The catering team served hors d'oeuvres on silver trays. Tiny masterpieces, smoked salmon bites, miniature beef Wellingtons, little tartlets that looked too perfect to eat. My family milled about, pretending to be relaxed, laughing a little too loudly, praising the view, the furniture, the good taste. But it was easy to see beneath the surface, their eyes darting around, trying to piece together the puzzle they couldn't solve. How? When? Was it a lottery win? Was he lying about struggling? They were desperate to believe this wasn't real. Because if it was, it meant everything they believed about me, and about themselves, was wrong. Mark, always the boldest, pulled me aside by the champagne table. So seriously, he said, forcing a grin. How'd you swing all this? Who's paying you? Or is it some kind of, crypto thing? I smiled thinly. I built it, I said simply. He blinked. Built what? My company. My brand. Everything. He stared at me like I was speaking a different language. Built. Not gifted. Not stumbled into. Built. Mark patted my shoulder like I was a child and laughed. This weak, shaky thing that didn't quite reach his eyes. Man, that's wild. Good for you. Really. Proud of you, bro. He wasn't. Not for a second. Across the room, I caught my mother's eye. She gave me a smile, tight, strained, the kind she used to wear at church when pretending everything was fine. I nodded politely. There would be no shouting today. No arguments. No accusations. Just one final, clean cut. I checked my watch. Almost time. I walked to the center of the room where the chandeliers poured golden light over the marble floors. Raised a glass, not for a toast of celebration, but for closure. The room quieted immediately. Every conversation died mid-sentence. They all turned to look at me, eager, expectant. Finally, after all this time, I had their full attention. I held the glass loosely in my hand, letting the silence stretch just a little too long. The weight of their stares pressed against me, but for once, it didn't bother me. For once, I controlled the room. I cleared my throat casually. First of all, I began, my voice calm, measured. Thank you all for coming. A few polite nods. Awkward shuffles of feet. I'm sure you're wondering why I invited you here today, I continued. And the truth is, it's not to brag. It's not to show off. I set my glass down on a nearby table, the soft clink sounding almost like a bell toll. I brought you here because I owe you something. They perked up, sensing something. Maybe they thought I was about to offer them a piece of the pie. Maybe they thought I was about to share my success with the people who had always been there. I let that hope hang in the air for one long, brutal heartbeat. Then I smiled. Cold. Final. I owe you a thank you, I said. Because without you, none of this would exist. Murmurs. Confused smiles. I went on, my voice steady as ice. Thank you for every insult you ever threw at me when you thought I wasn't listening. Thank you for laughing at my dreams. Thank you for betting against me, for doubting me, for making it crystal clear that your version of family only extended as far as your own comfort. Mark shifted uncomfortably. Jenna looked like she was about to say something, but no one dared interrupt. I took a breath. Leaned in slightly. You taught me something valuable. You taught me that real family isn't blood. It's loyalty. It's respect. It's standing beside someone when there's nothing to gain. A beat. And because of that lesson, today is not just a celebration of what I built. It's a farewell. The words hit them like a slap across the face. I'm cutting ties, I said quietly. After today, I will no longer be part of this family. Silence. Total, stunned silence. Then, like a dam breaking, the noise exploded. But we're family! Aunt Linda cried. You can't be serious, Jenna stammered. Mark stepped forward, looking almost panicked. Hey man, come on, don't be dramatic. Even my mother, usually so composed, looked like she'd been punched in the gut. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. I just smiled. A real smile this time. Free. I wish you the best, I said. And I hope, someday, you realize what you lost. Then I turned. And I walked away. I didn't look back. Behind me, I could hear the desperate calls, the pleading voices growing fainter with every step. Wait. Please don't do this. We didn't mean it. You're making a mistake. I kept walking. Past the marble floors. Past the glittering chandeliers. Past everything that used to hurt me, and now meant absolutely nothing. I reached the front door. Paused. And then, without a second thought, I closed it behind me. The heavy thud echoed through the house like the final closing of a chapter. Not just of that day, but of my old life. When the door clicked shut behind me, the world outside felt different. The cool air brushed against my face. The sun was starting to dip low, casting a soft, golden light across the driveway. Everything was quiet. Peaceful. I stood there for a moment, just breathing it in. No noise. No guilt. No second-guessing. Behind those walls, my old life, the life spent chasing approval, begging for scraps of affection, was finally, completely over. And standing out there, under that wide-open sky, I realized something. The silence wasn't empty. It was freedom. I didn't owe them anything. Not explanations. Not apologies. Not forgiveness. They had made their choices. And now, finally, so had I. For the first time in my life, I wasn't running from them. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was simply moving forward. Without them. It's been months since that day. And you know what? Not once have I regretted it. The calls, the texts, they eventually stopped. At first, there were angry messages. Then guilt trips. Then desperate apologies. I didn't answer any of them.